Hey, everybody. I'm Vincent Mentz, owner of Three Nails Information Security. Today, I have invited Kyle Zarski onto our podcast, who is a network administrator at a credit union. Um, I invited Kyle because I felt like he had a lot of really great insight into the industry and just cool experience that I think would be really valuable to share to the industry as a whole, especially other fellow network administrators who interact directly with C-suite executives. So, Kyle, thank you for coming on the show. If you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I've been in the industry for just over 5 years now. Been in the financial sector the whole time in the information technology field. Currently have an associate's degree in network administration, working towards a bachelor's degree, and side job. I also teach a couple IT courses as well. Um, we're a pretty small organization, all things considered, so do a bit of anything and everything from security to backups to help desk to print servers, Active Directory, you name it. I've had my hands in it a little bit at our organization.
Awesome. What IT courses are you teaching? I know you had brought that up, but I didn't think to ask you about them.
So I teach essentially a Linux Plus course. It helps students get prepared for the CompTIA Linux Plus exam. And the second course I teach currently is a course on PowerShell scripting.
Awesome. Love
Yeah,
that. Um, I love teaching courses too. It's so fun to interact with students. You know, you get to see their hunger and you get to catch them at the very beginning of their journeys, which is really neat. It's neat. It's neat to see their passion. Um,
right.
awesome, man. Well, speaking of Linux, one of the statements that we had sort of previously discussed that you had spoken about was just like the misconception that it's inherently secure, which there is truth to that, but as a network administrator, what are some misconceptions that the industry might, have common belief about that, as somebody with firsthand experience on, you've kind of discovered maybe isn't entirely true?
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, all things equal, Linux is probably generally more secure than, say, Windows. I know back in the day that used to be because Windows had such a higher market share, it was a more lucrative target to develop malware for. I think these days Microsoft has come a long way in making things more secure. We got UAC back in like Windows Vista, Windows 7 era. Um, and Linux generally doesn't have the same kind of bloat that Windows tends to come with. But there's still, you have to watch out that you don't get complacent. Um, we had massive vulnerabilities in sudo, a couple years back. You have things like Log4j with Apache, and people tend to cut costs by not putting, say, antivirus or other kind of endpoint protection on their Linux devices. They spin it up, deploy it, and call it good. They don't go through maybe the same hardening checklist they would with the Windows, or they're not changing out passwords because they don't have it tied to Active Directory. Um, just a lot of stuff like that. Really, it just comes down to being aware of your own environment, being aware of what you have, and making sure that you are keeping it secure. I don't know how many Apache updates we've had to deploy in the past couple years because they have critical vulnerabilities. I'm drawing a blank on other software
Mm-hmm.
packages, but like CVE 2021 3156 we had discussed, that's huge. And with Linux, you also have the problem of something like sudo is used in pretty much literally everything that uses Linux. So if one thing's affected, they're all affected.
Sure.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think I think what you're saying is really, it bears a lot of weight. I mean, it's very true. I think a lot of companies that we work with, a lot of the administrators have misconceptions like that, that they just need to implement, or they, if they buy the newest hardware or the newest software and things like that, and just kind of willy-nilly put them in their network, maybe leave them there, forget about them for a few years, that oh, we're good, it's the latest. It's, well, a few years is not the latest, and nowadays it's like
right.
less time needs to go by for vulnerability researchers, threat actors to find critical issues and ultimately compromise those operating systems. I think it really speaks to the importance of conducting things like penetration testing, because even if there's not critical vulnerabilities discovered in the software suite, there's a whole attack surface called misconfiguration, or
Right.
default configuration. Even nowadays, Windows is not shipping as vulnerable anymore. There's still issues there, but I think up to like Windows 10, there were default protocols enabled from like 1995 or something that
Right.
are abusable, and
Yeah.
so yeah, things like misconfiguration really add a whole attack surface, which I'm sure you're
Right.
well aware of as a network admin. You probably have to deal with um, configuration, reading manuals, reading PDFs all the time. Do you bother to read those things, or do you feel like you throw things in the network willy nilly? Where where do you stand on it?
Um, I would love to say I could recite every manual I've read on every product. Depending on the product, like, a lot of the stuff is it's not a new, it's a replace, and so
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to pull an Indiana Jones and quickly pick up the treasure while putting something else in its place before anybody notices. You might
Mm,
not have the luxury of, okay, the old one was running on SSL 3 because it was deployed 10 years ago and nobody's bothered to keep it up to date.
sure.
So I don't know what's going to happen if I tell the new one, hey, it's got to be TLS 1.2 or higher, or
Mm,
don't connect.
mm-hmm.
And if you throw that in there and it causes an organization wide outage,
Mm,
you're not going to be well liked.
yeah.
So there are
Yeah.
struggles like that, or just finding the time to do it. Like every other industry, it seems these days, people are short staffed and it's hard to find the time to master the products you have, especially
Mm-hmm.
in IT, because you have so many different systems you have to learn and
Sure.
manage, and they're always changing too.
Sure. As a network admin, let's say you have a team of pen testers come in, and this pen test team recommends that you incorporate specific network controls or group policies that, like you said, could result in a decent lift. A handful of work that might require a weekend or something of downtime. How do you convey that to sort of C-suite executives or the higher ups that you need to communicate to, that hey, we need to do this ASAP, and but it's gonna cause downtime? How do you sort of coordinate that, and what do you say?
Sure. So I am lucky in that we have pretty wide maintenance windows. No staff are really working after hours Monday through Friday. Um, Saturday afternoons and later, people are out of there. Sundays are pretty much wide open. So we have a lot of flexibility to quickly make these changes as needed. In the event something that is there's something, let's say it affects our members who are obviously not within our organization and they could be using their stuff at any point in time. Um, that's a little trickier, obviously, where we need to kind of give them a heads up, like, hey, there might be an outage issue around this time. We don't give them a ton of details because not that we don't want them to know that we're making the network more secure for them, but the more information we put out publicly, that unfortunately gives the bad actors more information to go off of. So we say, well, we found we had an issue with TLS 1.0. That's information that they don't need. So um, we try to keep it as a need to know basis in that regard. But it's generally, talking to the C suite saying, like, this is where we're at, this is where we should be, these are the risks, and this is, the solution we need to take to mitigate those risks.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, part of the challenges I've seen in the past is just that sort of conveying the significance and importance and coordinating, right? There seems
Right.
to be a bridge or a gap that needs to be bridged oftentimes between network admins and those C suites. And the relationship there is interesting. I've seen really good relationships with those look like, and then there's just like non existent ones where it's like C-suite is just controlling the network, controlling the organization from like a distance, and I don't know. The organization suffers ultimately. IT team suffers, but and no,
Right.
cybersecurity overall is what's going to suffer the most. But um, awesome. Transitioning into the topic of being qualified to be a network administrator, or really anybody in IT, how do you feel about work experience versus certification in the industry? I'm not sure if we had talked about you helping, hire on new hires or being part of that interview process or anything like that, but what's your experience and like, what's your opinion on, both of those, types of categories of people that are coming in to, be
Sure.
an IT person?
Yeah. So my general rule of thumb from my experience is that experience, and it doesn't even have to specifically be the same IT experience as what you're hiring for. Even just general work experience can give you a good understanding of a person. Certifications, at least at the low level, when you're talking your A plus, your network plus, that kind of stuff, they it seem to show more that somebody's able to study for a test, in my opinion. Now, granted, I did earn them when I was going through school to help me get in the door, and they're great for that. They help you get noticed by people who are hiring. But really, you're going to learn most of your stuff once you start the job. Even if you're coming from another job where you have years of experience, it's going to be a different environment, different systems, different procedures, different way of life, different perspective. Like you said, your C suite might be very security focused, they might be very convenience focused, or hands off, or very micromanagement. It all depends. So, how you're going to be able to perform your job is going to depend on all those factors. Um, I've worked with people who earned a handful of different certifications while they're going through school, earned their degree, and they floundered. I've
Mm,
worked with people who came in with little to no IT experience, but they had a lot of experience with working on teams, being organized, documentation, a lot of those less, some of those skills that aren't necessarily appreciated as much at first, but that person, like you said, little to no actual IT experience, absolutely rocks at their job.
mm.
So yeah, if I had to pick between a person who had work experience versus somebody with certifications, again, entry level certifications, if you're somebody who's getting some really high level certificates, those are a little harder. They do show a little more than, say, something like an A plus or net plus. But otherwise, I'm going to lean towards the person with work experience.
What do you think the characteristic traits of a successful IT person are, out of curiosity?
So I would say for an IT person, um, not really the technical skills. Don't get me wrong, you need the technical skills, but like I said, that's always going to change depending on the environment you're in. It's going to change over the years as things come and go. But really being able to stay organized, keep your priorities straight, and communicate with people. Communication is such a critical aspect of most every job, but especially when you're talking cybersecurity, you need to be able to identify risks. You need to be able to communicate what those risks are, how to fix them, when they need to be fixed, and who needs to be involved, what's going to be impacted. Ton of communication that goes back and forth. Um, Even addressing an incident. Okay, what happened? What was the damage? How did we fix it? How do we prevent it? You're not a Nobody can be their own one man army that does everything. You need to work with people.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I feel like there's probably some pretty good trainings out there too to help really smooth out sort of the convergence between, just between teammates and like different portions of the team and inside the organization. But speaking to training, one of our conversations that we had sort of touched on was, to pull it back into pen testing a little bit is social engineering. I think that's to continue conversation on cybersecurity. I think that's such an important topic to continuously talk about is social engineering, the severe risks of organizations falling victim to it. And in your experience, what is your opinion on social engineering? Uh, I'll actually let you share. Yeah, what is your opinion on it, and maybe experience? Have you ever experienced as a network admin being social engineered? What's your take on it?
Sure. So, especially in the IT industry, most people are vigilant. They're very almost cynical about um, contact, especially when it's coming from somebody you don't know. Like, for instance, when you first reached out to me, I didn't know if you were legitimate. I
Sure.
at least had that doubt in my mind, like this could be somebody who's trying to scam me or just sell me something, cold
Mm-hmm.
calling, whatever it might be.
Sure.
Obviously, that's not the case, but in our industry, we're always a little vigilant about that. That
Yep.
being said, I've never been social engineered yet, um, that I know of at least.
Mm.
It's one of those things. Low and slow attacks. You never know until
Sure.
you find out that it's happened. But my opinion is because of the dynamic between the person who's trying to social engineer you and you, the person who's trying to avoid being social engineered, you can anyone can be social engineered. You're never going to be 100% vigilant and
Mm.
100% mistake free. All it takes is you to make one mistake,
Yeah.
and that's it. I've worked with a guy who is very good at his job, very vigilant, but I believe it was like a fake UPS email.
Sure.
Just happened to be when he was also expecting a UPS email for a project he was working on. That was an urgent status. He's in the middle of taking care of a crisis. Happened to click on it
Mm.
and got his credentials compromised. Now, thankfully, as soon as it happened, he realized what happened, immediately changed his credentials and prevented any fallout. But it
Yeah.
still just takes that one misstep for
Mm.
somebody to social engineer you.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, for the general public and non IT employees, a
Mm-hmm.
big thing is educating them what to look out for, help and beyond just telling them what to look for, because we've all sat through those corporate trainings. We're like, well, look for a character that's not actually an A but looks like an A, um, which you do. But most places have email filters these days that are going to identify an external email. They're going to hopefully block a lot of that stuff. Um, but learning, like, your vendor can be compromised. I've gotten um, scam emails from my legitimate contacts because their
Sure.
accounts are compromised on 365 or whatever their email provider is. But
Mm-hmm.
getting them invested in being vigilant with their own security against social engineering will pay dividends. You can put in all the controls you want, but unless your staff are actually educated on what to look for and why to look for it, it's never going to be as foolproof as it could be otherwise.
Preach it, man. That's one big thing I'm always pushing too. Is I love cyber training, but my favorite kind is the kind that helps people to take their cyber training into their personal life and take it home with them. Because
For sure.
it's a in today's day, like man, every single aspect of your life needs it now. It's
Right.
there's a whole underground industry of I'm not even gonna call them hackers. They're just malicious people trying to
Right.
steal your credit cards and steal your bank account login. Like
Yep.
you wouldn't think it's that significant if somebody could just log into your bank because it's like, oh, my bank's got me covered. But you see it all the
Right.
time.
Yep.
Massive transfers being possible and transferring offshore. Now with the emergence of AI and being able to deep fake your face by having a photo or the voice by having like a 10-second clip somebody's voice, like you can get past a lot of security mitigations out there.
Yep.
Um, and in that topic of AI, like what do you feel about what as a network admin? How do you feel as AI relates to you mentioned you're in a smaller organization, so might not be as prevalent, but to the industry as a whole, what's your thoughts on AI? Is it going to be maybe what is it as a risk to the industry and what is it as a benefit to the industry?
So I think by and large, AI is going to kind of go the same route that cloud did. A lot of people are going to go towards it. It's going to become very prevalent. It's going to be hard to intentionally not use it. Um, as an old man who yells at the cloud, I'm not looking forward to that world. AI is scary to me. It's very
Mm,
powerful, very dangerous. You know, I'd read some article that the CEO of NVIDIA is saying that human coders aren't going to be a thing, you know, in the near future, and that they
Mm.
should go look at jobs in like the trades or farming or other stuff like that. Which I was like,
Bold.
that scares me because now you don't have that kind of human oversight, and that could be me being very conservative, very old fashioned. Um, but my experience, which I will say I don't have a lot of experience working directly with AI and managing AI systems, anything like that. But it seems like the focus is not on making sure it's secure, making sure that the data is kept private and confidential like it should be. The focus is on trying to grab market share by introducing new features, by marketing hard. And we're seeing, you know, there's vulnerabilities in Copilot, vulnerabilities in Chat GPT. Google Cloud just had some big vulnerability. I haven't had a chance to really read more into it, which Google Cloud is not AI, but it's the same concept. You know, IT moved towards the cloud and it's moving towards AI because the implication is that the people who are managing the cloud, the people who are creating this AI, they know what they're doing. They have your back. They're going to take care of you. At the end of the day, they don't work for you. You pay them. So their best interest is making sure that their company is successful. That doesn't mean making sure that your information is secure necessarily.
Well said. Well said. On that note, do you feel like it's, as far as compromise, business compromise goes, is it F and, or is it, it's not if, it's when type of compromise, or
Um, it depends on if you do your due diligence on your AI solution. For instance, I sat in on a webinar recently about an AI enabled, I guess the word would be endpoint protection. This one I think was actually kind of a next gen SIM solution. You know, when it comes to, AI does have a purpose. There are things AI can do that people cannot do. I will admit that. Machine learning, when it comes to identifying threats, fantastic use for it. It is something you have to make sure you are implementing it right, that your vendor is implementing it right. But a person is not going to be able to parse logs and react to logs anywhere near as quickly or as thoroughly as an AI. So it does have that benefit. It's kind of like an arms race between the malicious use of AI or the abuse of AI, not even
mm,
necessarily use, but there are certainly malicious uses of AI and the protective use of AI.
mm. Yeah, it comes down to, I mean, AI with its emergence too. It's like it's. I think we're still discovering in what ways it should be used. I feel like
Yes.
my perception is, yeah, put an AI in your network, whatever that means. some some AI software, something. Is it a machine? Is it a software? What does it do? And then give it access to everything that you want it to be able to, by automation or some format do. And then it because it's so like magic still. It's like, what does it even do? It's just, to me, it's very risky still. Like, as much as
Exactly.
I would love it because of the convenience, like, I'll admit that I integrate AI into all my meetings. I don't let it read my email yet, but that is an option now. And then I use it like a central brain. So I'm like, tell me, write me my next LinkedIn podcast based on this, and things like
Right.
that. And it's capable of those things, but at what point? I mean, here's what I'm scared of, is that we will trust it too much too soon, and then it's too
Yes.
late. And how do you pull out?
Right.
It just doesn't seem possible, like, because it's so much like magic. And what if you integrate it so deep into your network and into your organization and processes that if you turn it off, you go down, man, it's just wild. And yeah, as
Yeah,
far as AI security itself goes, jailbreaking AI is still very prevalent. There's websites out there. You just copy paste a prompt and bam, you can like read other tenant information potentially, like other people who are using
exactly.
the AI. And private AI is cool, but how private is it? So, and we just don't know. It's all
Right,
proprietary, right? All those SaaS providers and things. So
right.
it's
There's
it.
no equivalent of the Wi-Fi alliance. There's no standards. There's no
Yep.
best practices. There's no
Yep.
auditing to show that it's secure. It's
Absolutely.
we're seeing now data privacy regulations around the cloud, which has been around for however long it has. They're
Yeah.
just now catching up with it from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah.
I really enjoy what you said about it's magic. So what happens when we lose it? Let's say
Yeah.
your provider goes down or the thing just dies.
Mm.
NVIDIA CEO says we're replacing all our coders with AI. Okay, that's great. Till you need somebody to actually look at the code from a human standpoint.
Yeah.
Even longer term thinking, students are using AI to do their homework for them. People are using it to write their emails.
Mm-hmm.
Not to pick on Grammarly, but people are using it for that.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, as somebody who very much prizes communication skills, if you can't communicate well on your own, using an AI isn't going to help you be a more independent person.
Mm-hmm.
I highly value my independence. I like knowing that I can do things for myself and I don't have to rely on something else. But, 50 years in the future, when AI is just absolutely prevalent, most of the working force grew up with AI from birth. How
Mm.
many of them are going to know how to do anything? It's all going to be the AI doing 90% of the work.
Mm.
And like you said, what happens when it goes down? We
Yeah.
saw earlier this summer a massive worldwide outage because of one update to one
Mm-hmm.
security program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we are, to me, we're kind of teetering on an all or nothing risk at that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And to sort of just pull it back full circle, as far as AI relates to cybersecurity, I think there will be a time in the near future where even my company, Three Nails, will be pen testing AI and sort of sculpting what that even means, because it's still very vague. Like, what does it mean to pen test AI and things? So,
Right.
but ultimately, what I was trying to pull out of you there is just the idea and the principle that we should understand fundamentally what we're doing in our network, the security and risks behind the things we integrate. Don't willy nilly, keep saying that, but throw
Yeah.
things in your network. Making sure that we're following manuals, doing things properly, and investing the time up front. Don't and not just like slapping things in the network because somebody on Reddit said so.
Right.
Uh,
Or worse, a marketer marketed something to a C-suite employee who, they're great at
yes.
their job, but they're not
Yep.
an IT person. They don't understand how the stuff works or the implications, but they were sold on it. They signed the contract and they said, "Make it work.
Yep.
We bought it.
Yep.
And we're going to use it. I don't care what you think of it."
Yeah.
Uh, where if you can communicate with them, like at least keep me involved so I can say like, "Hey, these are the risks that you're bringing on with this. Are they worth it?"
Hmm.
Or is what we can do to mitigate those.
Hmm.
Like you said, awareness of what you're doing, what you have in your environment, absolutely critical.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Well, I think that's a pretty good stopping point for this episode, Kyle. I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing some thoughts and some experiences with us. I hope everybody who watches the episode enjoys. And if you have any questions for Kyle, feel free to reach out to him. You'll be tagged in the description of our podcast and things. So, yeah, thank you, Kyle, for coming on the
Yep.
show. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Vincent. It was a pleasure to be here. Forgot to say this earlier, but of course, my opinions are my own. They are not tied to any past, present, or future employers of mine.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Have a blessed day. Thanks.